Good morning, everyone. Today is Thursday, the 17th of October, and it's just around 5:30 in the morning. Thank you for tuning in and watching this video update on my What Would Jesus Do border mission trip. Yesterday, I drove down from the Winnebago factory in Forest City, Iowa, where I stopped just south of Chicago, and I think the town here is called Juliet, and I spent the night at another Cracker Barrel. Today I want to talk about this experience I've had in the desert, this experience with my What Would Jesus Do border mission trip, and how it's affected me in my faith. And when I talk about faith, it's my trust in God, trust in Jesus, and trust in others. First, on this experience, I experienced probably every emotion you could think of. Starting off with anger, sadness, and helplessness, moving on to grace, hope, and joy. And the anger, sadness, and helplessness was, at times, it was the people I'd met. It could have been the stories I heard from the various volunteers, or actually meeting and seeing some migrants along the trail, and seeing how they were scared and they were potentially hurt because they had cactus all over them. It was just like, oh my gosh, this is, they're totally unprepared for this journey across the desert and the walk that's mostly at night. And it's for us, when we're out during the day, it's a beautiful desert, but at night every plant's got teeth, and they're looking for the skin to stick those teeth into, and it's quite painful. So that actually made me angry, it made me sad, and made me also feel somewhat helpless, because there's not much we can do other than give them some water and food and some medical attention. But that then also moved on to grace, hope, and joy. And what do you mean about that? Well, that was when I went to Cruzando Fronteras, and I got to see how the kids were, they were so happy, and they were great, they were fantastic. They loved me, and I loved them, and I loved playing with them, as well as the adults. Even the adults, after a couple of visits, even the adults started to warm up to me, and we would sometimes, in some broken English, we could communicate, and sometimes with a bit of an interpreter. But it was great to it was really a blessing to spend there with them as well. And also that hope, because I'd heard stories I'd heard that a couple of the migrants there had their credible fear hearing, and they were being allowed into the U.S. But really, how has this affected my faith? Well, it's kind of funny. I've been a Christian my whole life, and I never thought that I was that closed about talking about my faith. But actually, I found out on this trip, maybe I was. Didn't really always feel comfortable at talking about faith and mission, using terms like mission, missionary, or Jesus and things like that. And I think it probably has to do with my background in business for 40 years, and we don't really talk about that in business. But I got a little bit more comfortable. I started testing the waters, not with the people that I was meeting in the Samaritans so much, because they knew why we were here. They knew I was from church. It was the others. At the RV park, when I was out, just touring around or whatever, people would ask, why are you here? So I'd start off with, I'm here for work. I thought, well, that's not being honest, so I need to be a little bit more honest and mention it. So I started off with, I'm on a mission trip, or I'm a missionary. And then, of course, those questions kind of came up, some a little bit confused. And then I would explain it was I'm on from the Episcopal Church. My trip I'm calling my What Would Jesus Do border mission trip, and what that meant. And I went through a couple of those points that you've heard me talk about. Jesus would be in the desert with his minister presence with people that had died. He would be with the children handing out toys. He would be welcoming the strangers. and so on. So I would mention those things. And to my surprise, most people actually were quite open to it and they wanted to hear. So I would actually share some of these stories that I'd heard, stories from the other volunteers that I ran into, from Crisanto Fonteras and Roger. Those stories, my experience at Streamline, and also my experience at Casalitas, and each one was a little bit different. But I was really thankful that I got to go for a whole month. During that whole month, my goal really was to see as many people as possible, hear as many stories as possible, and actually do that experience of walking with them through the desert, to leave water, and go to the shelter to meet the migrants that are there and to see them, and especially the children. I love children, and giving out the toys was like the best thing for me, and I think for them as well. I think they enjoyed that as well. But yeah, it really has affected me, in a very positive way. And Ranjan, if you're listening, we got a lot to talk about when I get back. Anyway, I think that's it for today. Looks like I've gone about 6.5 minutes, and that's a little bit longer than normal. But hopefully this all makes sense. If not, come to St. James on Thursday next week, and maybe I can fill you in a little bit more. You can ask some questions to me. It might be a little bit easier that way. Anyway, that's it for today. Until my next update, this is Chuck, and I wish you peace.